The studio lights were brighter than usual that afternoon, casting a glossy shine across the stage of the Kelly Clarkson show. The audience buzzed with excitement, a mix of longtime fans and curious onlookers who had come specifically to see Blake Shelton and Kelly Clarkson together again. Their history as coaches on The Voice had made them one of TV's most beloved duos, known for playful teasing, sarcastic banter, and an almost sibling-like chemistry. Everyone expected laughs, inside jokes, maybe even a surprise duet. No one expected tension. Backstage, Blake adjusted the cuffs of his jacket, forcing a casual smile as a producer gave him a final rundown. He nodded along, but his mind wasn't fully present. He'd been doing press all week, answering the same questions about music, life, and fame. Usually, Kelly's show felt like a break from all that, a place where he could relax. Still, something felt off today. He couldn't quite explain it, but the air carried a strange edge, like the calm before a sudden storm. Kelly, meanwhile, was pacing lightly near her cue cards, rehearsing her opening lines under her breath. She was a pro, but she was also human, and she'd been warned that Blake wanted to address a few things honestly on air. That word, honestly, can be comforting or dangerous, depending on how it's used. Kelly trusted Blake, but live television had a way of turning harmless comments into headlines. When the music hit and Blake walked out to roaring applause, he waved confidently, flashing his familiar grin. The audience stood, cheering loudly, and for a moment, everything felt normal again. Kelly welcomed him with open arms, joking about how long it had been since he last caused chaos on her stage. Blake laughed, clapping back with a comment about her being the only person who could still boss him around on camera. The crowd loved it. The energy was warm, playful, exactly what fans expected. They settled into their chairs, and the conversation flowed easily at first. They talked about music, old memories from The Voice, and how life had changed since then. Blake cracked jokes, Kelly laughed, and the audience responded with steady applause. But slowly, subtly, the tone began to shift. Kelly brought up Blake's recent interviews, specifically, comments he'd made about the music industry and how artists were being pushed into boxes. Her tone was curious, not confrontational, but the question lingered longer than expected. "So," Kelly said carefully, "do you really think the industry's lost its heart, or do you think artists just need to adapt?" Blake leaned back, crossing his arms. His smile didn't fade, but something hardened behind his eyes. "I think sometimes people forget why they started making music in the first place," he replied. "And sometimes, that includes the people hosting the conversations." A ripple moved through the audience. Kelly raised an eyebrow, half amused, half surprised. "Well, I hope that's not a dig at me," she said lightly, trying to keep the mood relaxed. Blake shrugged. "If the boot fits." The laughter that followed was nervous, scattered. Kelly chuckled, but her eyes searched his face, trying to read whether he was joking or pushing something deeper. She pivoted smoothly, asking about his upcoming projects, but Blake's answers grew sharper, more clipped. He spoke about authenticity, about being tired of polished narratives and safe conversations. Kelly, known for her honesty, finally pushed back. "But isn't part of growth being open to change?" she asked. "You can stay true to yourself without shutting everything else out." Blake leaned forward now, elbows on his knees. "Change is fine," he said, voice firm. "But when change starts telling people who they're allowed to be, that's when I've got a problem." The room felt smaller suddenly. Even the cameras seemed to inch closer, sensing the shift. Kelly's smile faded just a bit, not gone, but guarded. "I don't think anyone here is telling you who to be, Blake," she replied. "This is a place for conversation, not confrontation." Blake let out a short laugh. "Funny. Because it feels like confrontation dressed up as conversation." A quiet gasp escaped from somewhere in the crowd. Kelly straightened in her chair, professionalism kicking in. "If you feel uncomfortable, we can change the topic," she offered, her voice calm but firm. "That's the problem," Blake shot back. "Changing the topic is what everyone always does." The tension was undeniable now, thick enough to feel. Producers exchanged glances off camera. Kelly took a breath, choosing her words carefully. "I invite guests here to share, not to feel attacked," she said. "And I won't let this turn into something disrespectful." Blake's jaw tightened. For a split second, it looked like he might back down. Instead, he stood up. "You know what?" he said, voice loud now. "Maybe this isn't the place for me today." The audience murmured in confusion. Kelly stood as well, hands slightly raised. "Blake, hold on," she said. "We can talk this through." But Blake shook his head, already stepping away from his chair. "I'm done talking," he replied. "Especially when no one's really listening." Security and producers rushed in from the sides as Blake headed toward the exit, the camera scrambling to keep up. Kelly watched him go, shock and disappointment flashing across her face before she turned back to the audience, trying to regain control of the moment. And just like that, what was supposed to be a friendly reunion had turned into a moment no one in the studio would ever forget, one that was far from over. The moment Blake disappeared behind the curtain, the studio was left suspended in an uneasy silence. The applause sign flickered on and off uncertainly, but no one clapped. Kelly stood frozen for a heartbeat, her hands still half raised as if she could somehow call him back with a gesture. Years of live television experience kicked in, and she slowly turned toward the audience, drawing in a steady breath. "Well," she said softly, forcing a small smile, "that wasn't how I thought today was going to go." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd, more out of loyalty than amusement. Kelly thanked the audience for their patience and smoothly tossed to a commercial break, her voice steady even though her eyes betrayed a swirl of emotions, confusion, frustration, and a hint of hurt. As the cameras cut away, the studio erupted into hushed chatter. Producers rushed the stage, speaking in urgent whispers, while stagehands adjusted equipment that no longer mattered. Backstage, Blake paced the narrow hallway, running a hand through his hair. The adrenaline that had fueled his words on stage hadn't faded yet, but it was starting to twist into something heavier. A producer approached carefully, trying to de-escalate, reminding him that Kelly hadn't meant any harm. Blake listened in silence, jaw clenched, then shook his head. "I shouldn't have said what I said," he admitted quietly, though his tone still carried stubborn resolve. "But I meant it." Kelly, meanwhile, sat alone in her dressing room, staring at the mirror. She replayed the conversation in her head, every word, every pause. She wasn't angry so much as disappointed. Blake wasn't just a guest, he was a friend. Someone who knew her heart, her struggles, her commitment to authenticity. And yet, on stage, it felt like he'd turned her into a symbol for something much bigger, something she never agreed to represent. When the show returned from break, Kelly addressed the moment head-on. She didn't dramatize it or deflect it. She spoke honestly, telling the audience that live conversations sometimes go in unexpected directions, and that respect mattered more than ratings. Her calm transparency won her a standing ovation, but the tension lingered like a shadow over the rest of the taping. Within minutes of the episode ending, social media exploded. Clips of the exchange spread rapidly, stripped of context and framed with dramatic captions. Fans picked sides instantly. Some praised Blake for speaking his truth, while others accused him of being disrespectful and dismissive. Kelly supporters flooded the comments with messages of admiration for how she handled the situation with grace. Hashtags trended. Opinions hardened. By the next morning, entertainment news outlets were running the story on loop. Headlines speculated about a feud, about years of hidden resentment finally boiling over. Anonymous sources chimed in, each with a different version of what really happened backstage. The truth, as always, was quieter and more complicated. Kelly addressed it briefly on her show the following day. She didn't name Blake directly at first, but eventually she did, choosing honesty over avoidance. She spoke about friendship, about boundaries, and about how passion without empathy could turn into something destructive. "I don't regret the conversation," she said. "I regret that it hurt someone I care about." Blake watched the clip later that night, alone at home. The anger he'd felt had dulled, replaced by a heavy sense of reflection. He hadn't meant to embarrass her. He hadn't meant to walk out. He'd simply felt cornered by his own emotions and reacted the only way he knew how in that moment, by leaving. Days passed. The noise slowly softened, but the question remained, would this be the end of their friendship? Then, quietly, without cameras or announcements, Blake reached out. A text at first. Simple. Honest. No excuses. Kelly read it twice before responding. Their conversatio.